Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about everything related to eating disorders, eating disorder recovery, and healing the relationship with your own body, with food, and with movement. And today I want to talk about a super important topic, which is I miss being sick, or I miss my sick body, or anything related to this. And especially for people who recover from a restrictive eating disorder or from an eating disorder where you kind of like purged and binged or like anything related to that, it is often the case that your body changes in recovery, right? Which is supposed to do. The weight that you gain back in recovery is the weight that you were never meant to lose. But it can still be so challenging to actually cope with weight gain. And sometimes this feeling sneaks in, the feeling of, oh, I miss my old body, I miss being sick. Or also like I miss my sick life, because for a lot of people that meant establishing a routine. I give you a little example of my sick days basically. So when I was sick, I had a very certain step number in my head that I would always follow. I actually walked a lot and I had a step counter, and I always made sure that I would get to my steps. I had a very set calorie number. I would weigh everything. It was overall like super controlled, not free at all. And it doesn't sound fun, right? And I tell you something, it wasn't fun. But when I was in recovery, I sometimes had this feeling of, I kind of miss it. I kind of miss getting up in the morning and getting the first half of my steps in and coming back and feeling like I achieved something already, and then getting to work. And I also worked a lot while I was walking because I worked freelance and for myself. So I always made sure to also work because I didn't want to feel lazy. So I was basically getting my steps in while working. So of course it felt like I would accomplish something. Of course it felt good to make money, even though I would never spend that money because I used to be very rigid with money due to my eating disorder. But it felt good to achieve something, even though that was far away from happy. And even though I missed out on so many things. I didn't go on vacation with friends. I missed out a lot of weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, all that kind of stuff. I missed out hanging out with my friends because I was so keen on getting my steps in. But I also, when I started recovery, missed coming back at home at night, seeing that I got my steps in, and finally be able to eat. That was something that gave me such a kick, like, oh, I got my steps in and now I know that I deserved my food, and now I'm super excited to eat the low-calorie food that I prepared for myself every night. I had certain hours after which I was allowed to eat, and before that I wouldn't eat, and I would just try to stuff my stomach with low-calorie foods, and all of that sounds awful. But for me, I was so caught up in my eating disorder that it felt amazing. And even though there were so many days where I didn't want to continue, where I didn't want to do this anymore, where I felt weak, where I felt like I'm not gonna stay much longer on this earth if I could continue doing this, where I was sad or felt guilty for missing out stuff, where I just felt so low on energy that I felt like I couldn't even wake up. And yes, there were days in my recovery where I wanted to go back to those days. But if I was completely honest with myself, living with an eating disorder was a living hell. And I am so glad I recovered. I'm actually in San Diego at the moment. We're in this little apartment that we rented. And yesterday I went for a little walk to just answer some voice messages from a friend. And I kind of was a little bit hungry. And so I just grabbed a cupcake and ate this cupcake. I was on my own. I enjoyed this new city. I sat in the sun and I was like, damn. This is what recovered life is for. I didn't have any second thoughts. I didn't feel like, oh my God, I ate a cupcake now, so I have to make up for it. I still had a burger for dinner. I still relaxed a lot. So if we're being completely honest, recovered life is so much better than anything your eating disorder promises to give you. But we also get so used in our eating disorder, and there is a reason why so many people stick with their eating disorder for so long. It makes sense on a psychological level. And another thing that is super important are fading effect bias. I'm actually going to make a whole other video about it, but I just want to mention it here briefly. So fading effect bias, break it down, simply mean that a lot of times when we went through something hurtful or went through something hard times, looking back at it, it often doesn't seem so bad anymore. And maybe you know that from other situations. Maybe you had a hard time in high school, and then 5 years after finishing high school, you're like, oh, it was actually not that bad. Some people experience that with toxic relationships. After they break up with a toxic partner, they're like, well, it wasn't that bad. We also had really good times. Or some people also experience that with addiction. Like, for instance, people who were addicted to alcohol, after they stopped drinking, they might be like, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. I actually had some good times with alcohol. So this is caused by fading effect bias. And fading effect bias are kind of like a coping mechanism of your brain to make you go through things better. So the brain needs a lot of energy to cope with negative emotions. So everything that causes negative emotions, trauma, some kind of negative feeling needs a lot of energy for your brain. So your brain actually, after some time, rewires and is like, oh, it wasn't that bad, because it's just like easier for your brain to process if something wasn't as bad. And another reason is also kind of it's like the same thing that people who went through traumatic experiences, which eating disorders definitely are. Eating disorders are super traumatic for everyone who's going through it. And this is something we also see in people who, for instance, went through trauma or even have PTSD, get triggered and then dissociate. This is the body's reaction to protect you. And this is something that happens with fading effect bias as well. It is actually the brain's or the body's way of protecting you from something you went through. So it kind of makes sense that looking back at your eating disorder makes you feel like, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. But it's also super dangerous, especially when you start to miss your eating disorders or to miss those highs that you had during your eating disorder, because that's what it is. When I went home and I saw, oh, I actually achieved my step goal, or I actually even went further, which means I allow myself so and so many calories more, it was a little high. Everything that I did was based on food, calories, and staying as skinny as possible. And everything that made me feel like I achieved this goal, or every time I would step on the scale and I saw that the number is low enough for my own standards, it was a little high. But let me tell you, this high is not healthy at all. And I can also tell you from a recovered and healthy perspective that there will be so many highs in your recovered life that are so much more sustainable. Because I give you an example. If I would, for instance, achieve my step goal, or look in the mirror and I liked what I saw, or I had like a clothes size that I thought was good for me, and then the next day somebody said something that triggered me. It didn't even have to be anything bad or anything regarding my body, but my eating disorder turned everything around. So it was actually very, very easy to trigger me. So if somebody would say something that made me feel like I wasn't as skinny anymore, which didn't make sense because the day before that I actually felt skinny enough, which is also part of body dysmorphia, but I was devastated. So this feeling was not sustainable at all. This little energy high that I had that one night or that 1 minute did fade so quickly. Whereas now that I'm recovered and healthy, I sometimes have things that give me such a high and they last forever. And even if they don't last forever, they make my whole day or my whole week. I'm grateful for them. For instance, I'm in San Diego right now with my boyfriend. It was his idea. He kind of planned the trip. And so, of course, that was something even though it was a super spontaneous trip, I actually looked forward to. Like the whole drive down here, I was like, this is going to be so excited. Every morning I wake up and I looked outside, and I'm literally standing in front of the window now, so I can look outside and I'm like, damn, this is so beautiful. Every time we leave the hotel, I'm like, it is so pretty. I can't. So just like spending time with my loved ones, or for instance, achieving other things like getting the job you want, or achieving a personal goal, which has nothing to do with your body or anything like this. This will give you the real energy highs. I have my sister and her husband visiting in a few weeks, and I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to this. And every day, every time I remember that they're gonna be here, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. And this is like way more sustainable and also way more healthy. And you might notice that a lot of these highs actually have to do with other people. Of course, not always. I also have a lot of things that I am proud of for myself, things I achieve for myself. But I also have a lot of things that give me this energy high and make me feel very lucky and very grateful that have to do with other people. And that was certainly not the case in my eating disorder. Yes, I had friends, and yes, I was looking forward to seeing them, but it was so different because I kind of isolated myself so much, and I concentrated so much on my own unhealthy habits that everything that had to do with other people was also kind of stressful, and that changed completely. So this is your little reminder that if you are currently in recovery and you feel like you're missing your old body, or you're missing your eating disorder, or you're missing the habits you had back then, first of all, this is a temporary feeling. I know that doesn't make it easier, but it is a temporary feeling. This feeling will go away, and there will come a point where you will be fully recovered and you're like, I never ever want to go back again. I promise you that. But you have to stick with recovery in order to get there. And the second reminder is that everything that you're missing was disordered. that was not healthy. And I know that it can be very hard, especially when you're still in your eating disorder or also when you're in recovery, to want to be healthy, because oftentimes there is still a part that doesn't want to be healthy, which is very common. That doesn't mean that you won't recover. But also here, there will come a point where you can see that you want to be healthy. There is nothing that I want more than to be healthy. And I really don't ever want to put my body through what I did put it through for 10 years. So I hope this helps, guys. Please let me know. Please give me some feedback. Let me know if these kind of studies help. Let me know if you want some other topics to be covered. And also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because it really helps my channel to grow, and I really want to reach more people in order to help them, in order to, make this world a little bit happier. And I just want to show people that full recovery is possible. I will see you in the next one, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week.